Powered by Riverside.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of You Know What I Like Theater. And it's Brie and Glenn here again to talk
Hello.
about plays and musicals that we have been seeing here in Central Virginia this summer. We're currently recording a little bit behind of where we've been, so we're about probably a week back from today's date. So the nice thing about, I think, the shows that we'll be talking about in these next few episodes is at least the one I think you'll be able to see for quite some time. The other one might already be closed, but you know, there's wonderful things coming up from both of these really established theaters. So hopefully if the things we're talking about interest you and you happen to miss it, there'll be other wonderful things that hopefully will interest you. So we'll be caught up hopefully by the end of this week because we only have 3 shows left to go see.
Yeah, it's the end is nigh, isn't it?
I mean, 5 weeks went by really quickly. You know, I think that we kind of talked about in last episode where we started July 5th with a show, but kind of in earnestly more really around July 9th. And so we moved it to August 9th. And August 9th for us in this time, I don't know when you will be finding this historical artifact in your time, but that's this upcoming weekend for us. So we're kind of at the end of consuming live theater, and we are a few podcasts behind. So we'll have to record a few episodes before we get caught up. And then, you know, I made a little social media post today being like, I'm actually looking forward to spooky season.
What?
So I've gotten really into finding like new spooky musicals. And of course, we're in the hometown of Edgar Allan Poe, came here to college and had a real miserable time. So people like to claim him just as equal as Baltimore, I think, where he died. And so it's one of these things where, you know, we like our spooky season here, and we're always looking forward to kind of like that next big spooky adventure. I know when I was in grad school, I participated in the Spirit Walk. I got to play a couple of Central Virginia ghosts, and you came and saw me at one of those. So
I did, actually. I drove up about, what was it at the time, 5-6 hours to see you in a ghost walk. It was a great show.
Yeah, it's always a really fun time. I don't know if they've done it. I've kind of talked with a few people saying they wish it was brought back. I know that locally there's a lot of other ghost walks. I don't think we've had one in town. But maybe soon. But yeah, I was like, I am done with oppressive heat and torrential rainstorms. I would love a rainstorm if it would make it cool, but I am looking forward to fall and leaves and spooky. So I've been trying to look up some of my new musicals and plays that I might be interested in, and been discovering that. And I've shared with you, I just started listening to Lost Boys, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
And Amber Ruffin's musical about Bigfoot was pretty funny. I found a couple of songs. They don't have a soundtrack yet, but is there anything that you've been kind of finding that is much more Halloween? I know you're much more film optimist, but what's kind of your spooky traditions?
Well, and that is the thing, is I am usually film optimist, so I was just thinking that maybe what we'll have to do and do a couple of episodes of the podcast, if you're up for it, is I'll have to find you some spooky, fun movies that were based on plays or something like that. Because what comes to mind right away is Rocky Horror and Little Shop of Horrors, but both of which you're familiar with.
Yeah. I went ahead and I changed your lower third.
Ah, yes, I've now guessed the film optimist. Huzzah! I
Yeah, we talked
finally
about you
actually
being a
rate.
film optimist before, and I'll let you plug your handles at the end here. But we
Yeah.
got a really fun one today, one that we both really enjoyed, and that was
Mhm.
both of our very first experiences going
Yeah,
to the American Shakespeare Center.
absolutely. And we talked about it a little bit when we were on site, but you are not originally from Virginia.
No. Now I grew up in Texas, so I feel like kind of our big things was the Alamo, and I went to Palo Duro Canyon when I was a little kid, and then I went to high school in Pennsylvania, where of course we have Fort Pitt. There's a lot of things that are based in Pittsburgh, but there's a lot of George Washington slept here moments. So it's like one of the experiences that I think that I really neglected is like, we went to Williamsburg for a conference, and that was always a big thing that kids went to in Virginia. And I said, well, of course, when you were a child, you came here of like, didn't you? And I think you were like, how old do you think this is? I'm like, forever old.
Yes, and it turns out that I am just old enough that I am like the last generation to not really have the experience of the American Shakespeare Center as something that Virginia school kids did. Back then, it was still the Shenandoah Shakespeare Express, and they didn't really have a home theater. They were a touring company that went all over Virginia. Um, I think I got to see them once do the Scottish play. They came to our school and did a production of that. But we'll be talking about it in a minute, I'm sure. But the Blackfriars Theater, where they play now, which is a reconstruction of the original Shakespeare's Blackfriars Theater, when I was in school, that was being talked about as, oh, that's a thing that is being built, but it didn't even exist yet. So,
Yeah, and I think like I knew a lot of people who are 5 or 10 years younger than me because, of course, going to grad school, you get in touch with younger people. We are currently in a show where I think the director is a little bit younger than us and kind of grew up in that whole American Shakespeare Center camps and, youth training program and stuff like that. So, like, it is like really hard to imagine that just in like 5 years. I kind of talk about this a lot with like Center for Talented Youth because I remember like I don't think that was available to us as gifted kids, and then all of a sudden it was available. And I think
mhm,
we had stuff like governor schools. We both participated in things like that.
yeah.
Like I was, as much as I love the arts, I never could break into the arts. I was always a science girly when it came to those types of things. Despite my best intentions, I tried and I could
Mhm.
not. I went into like all state chorus and stuff like that, but I could not get into like the arts conservatory programs I wanted to. And I know that you went to governor school for the arts, but I mean, like we
Yeah.
really missed out on stuff just by like a high school generation, like 4 years.
Yeah, and it's kind of wild to think that. On the other hand, for my school, I think of things like I was part of the Southwest Academic Conference when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Odyssey of the
Apparently,
mind.
yeah, apparently my program that I competed in does not even exist anymore. So now my old school, now for their students, participates in College Bowl. So that sort of thing.
Yeah. So anyway, American Shakespeare Center does have that reputation though. It's like it's been here for
Mhm.
forever. People have grown up on it. It is a wide-reaching tour group. You see it on PBS all the time as like, here's the experts. If it's not here, it's Folger in DC. I mean, there is just like such a strong tie to Shakespeare in Virginia for better or
Mhm.
for worse. And just because it has this ubiquity, like I literally thought, well, of course, if you grew up in Virginia, everybody knows this. Everybody went here. It has such an air of authority. There is so many experts and symposia and Mary Baldwin. I mean, there's just like all this stuff that like you just kind of get this feeling of like, well, of course, everybody knows what this is and has participated in it, and we just kind of forget how short history really is here.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I mean That's kind of a wild thing when you think of it. It's like, and it's hard to tell, is history short or is my life long now?
Yeah, there's definitely been some years that feel longer than others.
Yes, that's true.
Well, I'm going to get into kind of our brief description. I think we've talked
Sure.
about it a little bit. I know, like, I have certainly interviewed to maybe like work there. I've never gotten hired, but I was
Hmm.
familiar with it from that, just because I've had a lot of background with education programs and technical theater and stuff like that. So I knew kind of where it was, but like I said, I don't remember how I parked. All I knew is I knew kind of the stuff around it. I figured, well, it has to be easy to find, but here's my little blurb. So we went
Okay.
to the American Shakespeare Center on July 25th at 6:30 in downtown Staunton. It was cost, getting into the high
Right.
numbers here. I kind of saved a
Okay.
lot of our higher numbers for last. $155 in total for two
Ooh.
adults. And this included a little special bit of programming, which I'll talk about soon. So it was a higher cost, which, like, again, contributed to that whole, well, it's been here for forever. It's the expertise. It's the, Shakespeare capital of the world kind of thing. I guess aside from the globe.
Mhm.
Very American for me to be like, our Shakespeare's the better Shakespeare.
Yes.
And I had parking free because we had a bit of a story around that, so we'll share that soon.
Yeah.
The show that we saw was As You Like It, which is one of our favorites. We really
Hmm.
enjoyed it. We were excited to see it. We also added on a cider tasting before the show. So, like I said, our original tickets, still pretty high. They were $105. And
Okay.
this was an added $50. We got to meet with one of the makers from the local company, Ciders from Mars,
Hmm.
which was really fun. And it was about an hour before the show, and they put us kind of in the hallway, and we had gluten-free pretzels and 3 different ciders, and they talked a lot about it, and we'll get into that. But I also put here, came with a souvenir glass for each of us, but we forgot. And I emailed the box office for help, and they were lovely. They said, "Oh yeah, come on Wednesday." And I was like, "Oh, we can't do Wednesday because we're in a show." So we are like the bane of, like, a bane and a boon to many local theater companies. On the one hand, they're really excited that we are seeing a show every single day as we possibly
Hmm.
can manage, Thursday through Sunday. But we also then are like, well, then we're also in a show and we can't really have our evenings free. So luckily the lovely person, Rosemary, I got a hold of her and she was like, yes, anytime the box office is open, please come in and let us know who you are. We will give you your glasses. They're just behind the register. You don't have to worry about anything. Well, we got it, but you gotta come here. That was the only thing. Is I'm sure if we were further away, they would have shipped it, but because we are local and about 45 minutes away, they're trying to get it into our hands when it's convenient for us. So I do want to highlight that the box office was lovely. We are just particularly difficult with our current schedules and what we choose to do in our free time.
Yeah.
So, the little description, this theater is very famous as the recreation of Shakespeare's Globe in America, also known as Blackfriars. If you have not been, you've probably seen it in many documentaries about Shakespeare in America. If not, you have seen pictures of the Folger in DC, which one of my very first jobs was I was living on Capitol Hill and I walked past the Folger every day to get to my bus to take me to Georgetown. So there's a lovely statue of Puck, and they were under renovations for many years. And I've seen a lot of Shakespeare in DC because a lot of friends that I graduated with had worked there. So I feel like I kind of have a special, like, relationship to both the Folger and now ASC.
Hmm.
So there's not much to say about Blackfriars, but it's very well known, and their website likes to describe them in this manner. At ASC, shared light connects the actor and the audience, illuminating every moment, creating a unique and intimate experience where you could see one another and watch the story unfold. And that was something really interesting
Yeah.
about the piece is they leave the lights on all the time, always. There's no
Hmm.
ghost light. There's no lights off, lights on. Everything is done out in the open. And that's kind of their slogan is we do it with the lights on.
Yes.
Since its founding, American Shakespeare Center has served as a beacon of artistic innovation, empowering education, building community, and fostering accessibility. We're a theater where you become part of the performance. And that was absolutely true. And I'll talk about like one of my favorite moments of that. So, I mean, I liked that. Like, to be honest, like I didn't have a problem of lighting being static. I know we've complained sometimes, oh, the lighting wasn't good or the lighting was very good. And so, I mean, it would be disingenuous to say that lighting is not important, but I
Right.
think for historical accuracy, and they say, hey, this is a feature,
Yeah.
not a bug. So I think that that's important to note. And I do think like the intimate space was very lovely in many situations. I think that we really enjoyed that aspect of it. So I think that they have already come into it. If this is a historical recreation, this is what it is. And that's what you're going to get. They don't really come into it as like limiting. They kind of use it as a structure or scaffold to build
Yeah.
creativity upon. And of course, that's what they do. They do it very well. They are one of the best to do it. And we had a huge audience on Saturday night when we went. And I
Oh
don't think there was
yeah.
one person there that was disconnected or bored, or I mean everybody was very much into it, and they really do involve the audience.
Yeah, and I do think it's interesting to hear that about, oh, the shared lighting connects the audience and the performers because so it's a recreation of the Blackfriars Theatre, the original Blackfriars Theatre in London, which, if I remember my history of drama and theater from so many years ago correctly, um, the Blackfriars Theatre began as sort of like the secondary space for Shakespeare's company. You had the Globe Theatre, which of course was an open air theater. There was no roof. They would perform during the daylight hours, so everything was lit by daylight. And then during the winter months, because winters in London are not fun to be out in for a long time, they would move their productions indoors to the Blackfriars Theatre, which was completely enclosed. And the shared lighting wasn't, as I know, an artistic choice on Shakespeare's part, so much as we need an awful lot of light in this room, and we don't have high powered bulbs. So we're just going to light the whole space.
Yeah.
But I love
Yeah,
that
I
they've
feel
created a creative sort of like connection with the audience sort of scaffolding for it.
yeah, I feel like, it definitely is a place where the history comes first. It's not that there's
Mhm.
not modern amenities. There was definitely air conditioning. There was indoor plumbing. But I do feel like it was a conscious decision. And like, with prices being how it is for electricity, that is not a cheap experience to leave the lights on all the time. But
Yeah.
the one thing that I was really bummed out about that I think I talked about a lot was you walk in and
Mhm.
you're like, ooh, pretty. There's tapestries, there's cushions. It's really nice. And they say, don't take pictures. You can ask an usher to take a picture of you at the end, blah, blah, blah. And like by the end, it was like 10:30, and I was like, I want to go home. But still, I was like, I did my very best. I did not take pictures. So I was like, I want to be invited back. I'd like to apply for a future job. I'd like to, maybe as an old lady come and act. It's like I honored their rule, but it's very, very lovely. And I'm gonna recommend that you go. Like it's gonna be one of these things. Like it was so funny during the cider tasting that there's not very many locals with us. They're like, I'm here from Texas, I'm here from South Carolina. They're just like, this is our big vacation. And they have a little hotel that's like right next door. So, I do feel like from my perspective, not that there probably wasn't any locals, like we had a very
Mhm.
small group we sat around. And then, of course, it was like maybe 6 other people with us at the cider tasting. So I think that there was probably maybe a couple, like half of them might have been local. But the perspective that I got from the audience, it was much more as like, this is the thing we're doing this summer. We're spending a little
Yeah.
extra, we're driving a little further, we're having an experience here, and this is the thing we're doing.
Yeah, and I just want to throw in there, like you were talking about, we want to get invited back. We're going to observe the rules and everything. As the film optimist, I live in mortal fear of the moment when somebody who works at the theater is holding a Polaroid camera and they're like, "Excuse me, can you step over here for just a second?" Click, okay. Because that means your picture is going up on the "Do not sell a ticket to this person" board. So yeah, what want to make certain that we remain on good terms with the Blackfriars.
Yeah, and I think we had great seats as well. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about anything. I think kind of my self-imposed rule was I tried to buy the cheapest seats when I could. And so I bought, gosh, I don't know, would you call that stage left or stage right?
I would call that stage left.
It was a very big thrust, and we were
Yeah.
on one very clear side of it. So we sat where it was like bench seating. Like it was
Hmm.
kind of like, I guess you could kind of say, the most medieval times type of seating. And that was really the only thing that was kind of hard for me is they're like, "Oh yeah, you're there." And I went and they said, "No, no, no, not there, further." And I was like, "Okay." Well, we had to climb up into our seats, which is fine for a normal person, but I'm 5 feet tall. So I'm like hoisting myself up and then like sliding myself down. And so I liked sitting that high up. I thought it was
Hmm.
great. I thought our seats were perfect, but I could definitely see how
Yeah.
some other people wanted to maybe. There's some people who could sit on stage. There were more traditional like wooden seats, and then there was these kind of like more throne type of seatings, and then there was of course upstairs. And it was actually really funny because the cider tasting was upstairs, and we walked over because I said, "Oh, I didn't buy the best seat, so we might be here." And the usher was so cute. The usher was like, "Oh, you need pee. This is pee pee." They said, "You need to go downstairs for pee." And I was just like, "Did we find the English version of the French joke? Oui, oui."
Yes. Well, and
So,
you did mention, I've got to mention real quick because I thought it was fun when you pointed it out. Our seats were very comfortable. It was a bench seat, but there was cushion, so it was, it was very nice to sit on. One thing was kind of a little bit lacking in back support, but then as I'm driving home, Bria's like, "Man, I wish I'd known about the lumbar pillows when we sat down." And I was just like, "There were lumbar pillows?"
yeah, I saw people putting them back at the end of the show, and there was a big pile of them as we walked out. I'm like,
And
but see,
me,
like that's the thing. It's like we don't ask for stuff. They say, "Oh, if you need accommodations, don't hesitate to let us know." And we're like, "No, no, no. We're doing an unbiased review. Like this means anything. It's just all self-imposed." So I'm sure if we would have asked somebody at intermission or tracked it down or whatever, but like to be honest, when I saw the cushions that people were sitting with, I thought, well, these are people that come from home. They come here all the time. They're
yes.
Shakespeare fanatics. They clearly brought their stadium cushions, and we'll have to know for next time. And then when I saw there was a stack of them in the gift shop and anyone could have taken them, I was like, ah, dang it.
All right. Well, let's see. Have Are we ready to get into like pros and cons here?
I think so. I think we kind
Yeah,
of we jumped the gun a little bit,
a
but
little
because
bit.
it was a very special evening. So like I think I've already kind of spoilered, right?
Hmm.
I think it's worth it. I think that it is expensive. Of course, if you don't do the extra $50 where you get a souvenir glass and everything, like it's a little cheaper. It's about $50 a person. That's like a very nice AMC Regal, with dinner or I don't know, Draft House or whatever. So, and if it's your once in a lifetime thing, it's a show you really like, I think you should absolutely go. I think it's a once in a lifetime thing. I think that we'll talk about it later, but I did say, like, I don't think I'd go for every show. Not every show is for me. There's a line in As You Like It of like, you are not for all markets. I don't have to necessarily pick all shows that they do, but I will say for a show you really love, for a really special anniversary or date night, like there's a lot of things that make this experience worth it. But it's not going to be it's not an everyday dress. It's not
Yeah.
an everyday outfit. It is you know, see something you really love, have a really lovely night out. But yeah, absolutely go. Just recognize that this is a historical theater this is, unfortunately, it is kind of like the American equivalent, going to medieval times, going to like a special. We went to dinner theater, like we kind of had that
Mhm.
same kind of vibe with the dinner theater. You go once, you go for something you'd really enjoy seeing, but it's not something you're going to go every weekend, like some of our other things where they make theater much more affordable, where it is an option comparatively to a night out or going to see a movie or something else.
Yeah, and I will say that there are people out there who go to medieval times every single weekend, but they are usually a very rare breed.
Yes.
Um, so I could see someone being like, "This is my thing. I really want to go to every production that goes on at the Blackfriars." I can totally see that. If you're not in Staunton or the surrounding area, it might not be feasible for you to consider going to every single show. So, like you said, as a special occasion, we've got a special event, let's celebrate, sort of thing. Or it's my favorite show of all time. I need to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also kind of got the vibe that they might have had like friends in the audience because it's a very small cast, but they're part of this training program at Mary Baldwin. Like you're basically like you're getting an MFA in Shakespeare performance, basically. And, they're all professional. Everybody that's there is paid. So, like, this is kind of a little bit different than some of our other things where the ushers are volunteers. And this is it. So, I mean, this is they are a money making operation.
Hmm.
Not that they're not a nonprofit, not that they don't have ushers that volunteer or stuff like that, but there's a lot of people there that are staff. There are people there that the actors are getting paid to be there, so they have a learning opportunity. They also make their salaries that way, the way a teaching assistant or somebody would.
Yeah.
All
So,
right, I neglected to get us into the pros. I had another
okay.
little aside, but let's get going. So I started off with kind of like, hey, look, this is peak experience of professional Shakespeare performed in America. You can't get better for what the platonic ideal of Shakespeare is. So
Hmm.
I can't necessarily sit there and say, like, nah, it was okay. That was great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And if I can add to that, the cast, as you said, they're very professional. They're very skilled in what they're doing, and it has that element that ensemble theater companies have of just a ridiculous amount of talent on stage, and they are not shy about sharing how much talent they have. So it's not just phenomenal performance, but it's also, yes, we're going to juggle. Yes, there are going to be acrobatics in the middle of the play. Yes, we are going to come out with instruments and play.
Multiple instruments. I mean, like, I
Yes.
think phenomenal was the perfect word because I said that 5 or 6 times in my next pro. Like, it's a phenomenon. It's phenomenal.
Mhm.
Insert Chapel Roan song here, right?
Yes.
So
I
I said cast was phenomenal as well.
Yeah, and like just as an example, you have I believe it's Orlando is the character. The guy who played Orlando opened the show with juggling. That was one of his first character moments on stage. Of course, Orlando has a wrestling scene, so he did some wrestling on stage, and then during musical numbers, he played the trumpet, so he was a trumpeter too. So it's just like, and he was not alone in the cast in having that much that was like, let me show you what I can do.
Yeah, I mean, I said I can't really highlight any one person. They were also great. But
Mhm.
I said Jacques was really phenomenal. He
Oh
has some of the
yeah.
most famous lines in the entire piece. And I said it was one of the rare times you felt the air change or you could hear a pin drop. So whenever he was speaking, and like, you don't really know who is playing what parts in the pre-show. Like, he was very much like, reminded me very much of like Jeff Bridges type,
Yep.
and he
Yeah.
played the accordion and he did all this other stuff. So it's like when you saw him come out as Jaquez, and it was such a different vibe because it was like fun loving Louisiana, like just really like a good blues man. And then he came out and was just like this. tragic clown, right? You know, it's like, I
Oh
don't, there's a
yeah.
lot of different ways you can describe Jaquise, but I always like to say he's a sad clown, you know? He doesn't like to see himself as a clown, but he plays upon a lot of the foibles of humanity and what is both tragic and very funny about being alive. And like, it was just like it was very magical and very special. And I think that's why I have to also say, like, it's amazing. Like, everybody was amazing. And that was like his particular astonishing feat. But I mean, you had 8 people on that stage and they were all like that. Like, I just had to
Yeah.
highlight him because he does have, with Rosalind, the most famous speeches that you're going to know from As You Like It.
Yeah. And you think of, I think back to that show, and like you said, the guy who played Jacques, very very intense. I like you said, Jeff Bridges quality to him, that yeah, he had that sort of reaction going from the audience of like the I know this wasn't Bridges, but the cowboy philosopher in The Big Lebowski. He provides this moment of like reflection that can be simultaneously somber but very funny at the same time, in the middle of what is genuinely a very chaotic show.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and we both really loved the girl who played Charles the Wrestler and
oh
Phoebe.
yes,
Like, she was amazing. We both really loved the guy that played the Duke's eldest son, but also Sylvius. And like, he had like a change where he spun around and turned his vest inside out. So I mean, that's the other thing I have to kind of mention about the cast is, like, for the most part, they are all playing multiple characters. There were very
yeah,
few people that was like, I am one character. So there were some people that they would have to juggle maybe 5 or 6 distinct characters, like everything from a sheep to a shepherdess to a clown to a royal. People of all ages. There were some older actors, very younger, newer actors. I mean, it was just such an impressive cast of repertory performers. And like, I'm gonna jump the gun a little bit. They are also performing this in tandem with another play. So
yeah.
like, they're not only memorizing, like, I'm memorizing 8 different parts, I'm also memorizing my 8 different parts in this other play. So I mean, it is just highly impressive amount of talent. And like, it just kind of makes you a bit sad that it's like there is so much amazing talent locally that it's like, I might not ever know who this person is. Maybe they'll be lucky and get on a TV show and have a wider range of fame. But there's a lot of people who's like, I love Shakespeare. I'm going to do Renaissance fairs. I'm going to go to Michigan and do something. I'm going to go to upstate New York, and they just go around and they just do Shakespeare or they teach. So it's just like really special to see this high level of talent.
Yeah. I gotta mention real quick as a positive. You mentioned the actress who played Charles the wrestler. I just loved the character of Charles in this production, because it was done as essentially as a drag king role. So she steps out in like very traditional circus strongman outfit with like the horizontal striped leotard. She's wearing a big muscle suit that's like gives her big biceps and big pecs, and massive mustache, and carrying one of those big old time dumbbells. And she
500
was,
pounds.
yeah, she was playing the 500-pound dumbbell, just like, oh, hold on, let me shift this over here. And it was just so hilarious, and I loved it. And I felt set a really good mood right off the bat of, oh, this play can get weird. And I loved that.
Yeah, and that, added to that, I love the costumes. For
Yeah.
the technical elements, love the costumes. Um, I think we'll get into a little bit, like, we would have liked it if they pushed it further, but
Yeah.
props, costumes, everything was really superb.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of skipping over because I already talked about box office was great, ushers were great, seats were great. Obviously, I hated it. I mean, it was one of these things that's like, there's so many good things. I said there was wonderful accommodations for family, both young and old, highlighting kind of that thing with the cushions. I know that we saw a lot of little kids that they put up in the balcony that they could run around and be a little bit wiggly. So I said, I felt like they were really trying to be very welcoming and meeting people where they're at to engage with this material. Um, I said parking was free. We never got charged for parking. We parked in
Yeah.
a parking garage, so I was like, "Hey, maybe go on Saturday night and they'll let you park for free." I don't know. We were lucky. And then I said there was really high quality of food and snacks. Like, I mean, we kind of got a package, but all this stuff was available for purchase, and they let you bring stuff in. Like we've been to a couple theaters where they're like, "Hey, if you don't get it now, you're never going to get it." But like they were very accommodating for, "Hey, bring in your beer, bring in your wine." Like they
Yeah.
want you to kind of have like that authentic Shakespeare experiences. And then I only have like one more pro that's different than what we already talked about. Do you
Okay.
have anything before I finish with my last one?
Let's go ahead and hear what you've got to finish us off with.
So I counted this as a pro, which I know you're going to remember from my
Mhm.
speech in Much Ado, where I was like, I don't know how they kept that in. That's not very famous. But I liked this version of the longer cut. I said they used a longer cut with more obscure speeches. And I think it's because of like these are actors that's what they do. And not to denigrate volunteers or people who are doing this on the side with their full-time jobs or school or anything like that. But I didn't mind it because the direction was very zippy. I said it was very zippy, well directed, well acted. And I think if you're going to try to save every gold nugget in the script, you have to keep that brisk pace. You have to be able to get everything in 3 hours. So, I think that they really had a good balance of, okay, well, we really got to cut this, but we're going to leave this in. Like the epilogue is normally something that some theaters cut and they kept
Yeah.
it. That is not something that is commonly done. And they kept it. And I thought it really worked. It could have been very easy to say, like, here's the wedding and the end. And it does draw the energy down, but I think that the actress who was on stage and ended it interacted with the audience in such a way, engaged in music in such a way that it really, really worked. And, that was, like I said, it's a risk. A lot of people don't do
Mhm.
the epilogue. So I said I still think that there was opportunities for us to cheer and clap, which I normally complain in a brisky, zippy, fast-paced, directive thing. But I also feel like, we didn't also need to clap all the time. We were very engaged in the story and the pacing and everything. So I don't know. I liked it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
say that was a thing I enjoyed, even though normally I don't, and I'm an old curmudgeon about that type of stuff.
Well, and it is, I will just echo that sentiment and say that it's very difficult. I've, you know this, I've had to edit a Shakespeare play myself and go through and make all the cuts. And uh, creating a longer edit like that, like you said, preserves a lot of the gold that usually gets cut out of the show. Uh, Producing an edit like that then is still just as accessible as a much tighter, leaner edit for a broad audience is amazing work. It's really great editing because it was more obscure elements. It was more, it was less heard Shakespeare, produced in a way that it was still very engaging for everyone in the audience.
Yeah, and I think like the director's note said this was one of the first shows he's ever directed at 20, and now he's revisiting it 20 years later. So I think like that had something to do with it. Like a lot of us don't have that opportunity to dip our oar in the stream again when we're directing,
Mm-hmm.
especially in community theater. Sometimes you're lucky if you get one shot at it. And then there's other people that that's all they do. So I think that was a really interesting piece of lore and how he kind of came at it. And yeah, like I said, I was like, there were stuff in there that I had only read in a Shakespeare class. It's like you sit there and you pull apart what this means for the character and why Shakespeare put it in. But for most, like you said, modern audiences, you're going to go ahead and say, all right, we'll do the 7 stages of man, da 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 da. We'll do the, Rosalind on the tree bit, blah blah blah. It's like you don't necessarily go into the in depth of an epilogue for a lady.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, it is a phenomenal thing that it's even mentioned in the epilogue that, as you just said, an epilogue for a lady. Epilogues in Shakespeare's time typically were not done by the female characters. So it's fascinating that it is such an important sort of outlier in Shakespeare's plays, and it usually gets left out of the actual productions.
Yeah. And that was it. That was my final prode. Can you think of anything that we forgot?
Oh man. Well, we've already discussed a lot about like the talent that was on display, all of the things, but I do want to mention just even briefly the pre-show and the intermission, because what you had was they said this is the band is the cast is the band, and it was everybody who's in the cast coming out and playing and singing, and it was all contemporary music, so a little bit of Zydeco, a little bit of classic rock, a little bit of blues, but all very appropriate for the show that we were seeing, and really did good in terms of establishing like this is a high energy, peppy show, guys. You're going to have to be like following along with us here, but we promise it's going to be fun for you.
Yeah, I feel like you should mention one of your favorite bits that happened. The female people in the cast sang "Knock on Wood," and I think you really cracked up at the banter.
Man, it was so long ago now that my brain is like blanking on what the banter was, but I do remember I loved the banter.
Yeah, so the lady who plays Rosalind comes out and she's like, "Hey guys, are you ready for another song?" And we all go, "Woo!" Woo! And the guy that plays the Exiled Duke is like, "That's going to get you into trouble one of these days. They're going to say no." And Glenn was just cracking up.
Yes, that is such a great bit.
Yeah. So really enjoyed that. Well, let's get into the cons. I will start with not much for us. We're Shakespeare nerds. We loved it. So my very first one is I said, as we were walking out, there was audience members around us because like now we just filled the space with hundreds of people. Now we all got to exit through one little door. And we were listening to a couple kind of like to our right. And I said, I do think some audience members were confused by the casting and adaptation with the multiple roles and who was what. But overall, very minor. Like, it was just like, who was that guy? Who was this guy? Why was he doing that? And then the husband was trying to explain. So I was like, yeah, I mean, not everybody's going to get everything, but that's okay. Like, we all had a great time. We all enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I said, basically, like, you could tell that this didn't matter because they came back out 2 more times for bows. Like, they all kept trying to go away. We're all like, no. And so they did 2 encores of bows where they all went off stage and we would not let them. Like, I was trying to do, like, 1 more time. And I think by that time, it's like, it's 10:30. Let's go to bed.
In terms of cons for me, not a lot that I can say for cons. I could be a big grumpus and complain about parking, but honestly, like you said, we didn't get charged for the parking. So really, really hard to complain about that.
Yeah, I said, I think that the experience felt small. And what I mean by this is you had to have a static set. You had to have all the lights on. The proscenium is historic. The set was very minimal because 8 people was a lot on that set. And, I feel like a lot of maybe traditional Shakespeare is park and bark. Somebody comes out, they say their line, there's an interaction with 2 people, but they had people everywhere and up there and on here and blah, blah, blah. And so I always say like, but to be honest, you go to see that. That is what you're paying for. You're going for that experience. So I can't even really consider it a con because this is what it is. Like, you don't just go to Sleep No More and be like, yeah, and then the actors talk to me. Like, like it's just, you are coming for this experience. You want to see Shakespeare being done in a historical place, right? So
Yeah.
I said, I don't think I can really say it was a con, but I do like to just kind of highlight, if I am going to talk about other places, technical elements, I don't have that to talk about here. I don't consider it a negative, but I can't necessarily pop it into prose either, so it's going to go here.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I think that, you made a comparison early on, which, I don't know, some people would be flattered by, some people would not be flattered by, which is medieval times. But
Like,
it is, I think that there is a thing about it that, like you said, for a set, you can't pull off a lot of spectacle. They had some moments of my reaction being like, oh, that was a lot more than I expected them to do. Of like, there was a scene when we went into the forest of Arden. Suddenly there were vines all over the back of the stage that weren't there a second before and everything. And that was more than I had expected to see for heading into the forest of Arden.
and they used the balcony,
Yeah.
that was cool.
And I think that I think the thing that you have to remember in terms of like spectacle of the show is that you're not going to get an awful lot of big spectacular thing on stage.
Yeah,
But
you're not
I
going to have
think,
pyrotechnics at the Blackfriars.
yeah, but I do think that part of that is because the Blackfriars itself is kind of spectacle. You don't see theater spaces like that. So
Right.
it adds to the general spectacle of the feel, even though it isn't, hey, take a look at our massive set we built.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the other very small complaint, right,
Mm-hmm.
was we loved Charles's costume so much that we
Yes.
said, why wasn't there more magical realism? Why wasn't there more?
Yeah. You,
Like we loved the touches so much that we're like, when you had somebody who was just a person, it made sense. It was fantastical. It was amazing. But like, I've seen this being done as 1920s carnival or circus. Like, I've seen this done. Like, I have a dream that I've always really loved to do it as a Bollywood film. So I feel like there are so many moments here that, as you like it, lends itself to, you're in a very magical forest. We saw a production at UVA Drama that was 1960s psychedelic hippie. Everybody's on magic mushrooms. So I feel like, as wonderful as everything was, this was the opportunity to go whoosh.
oh
And they
yeah.
did it where they could, but I was like, I would have liked more. I'm greedy like that. I was nom 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 nom.
Yeah. Anybody who has watched our previous episodes knows we both love weird theater. We love it when theater companies and performers and directors are willing to take the weird direction and stick with it. And yeah, like I said, Charles the wrestler set up a really good tone for the show. And it did make, I stand by that statement that it was set a good tone because it did sort of sell right away this isn't Shakespeare, like you said, Park and Bark Shakespeare. This is going to be rollicking, silly, funny Shakespeare. And it did then, though, never feel like it got back to that level of rollicking, silly, weird. And yeah, I would have loved to see that. And I agree, though, that it is sort of a minor complaint because the point they got to was still good. I just
Yeah.
would have loved to see more of that.
Yeah, I mean, they had somebody in a crash helmet with horns. So, I mean, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they did it again, but it's like, obviously, like, I also love magical realism as a storytelling device. Like, it is one of my favorite things. Like, I grew up in Texas, so I feel like I had a lot of that central Latin America that just bubbled up and really kind of like enchanted me about storytelling and myth telling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I want stuff like that. I want everyone to have fake muscles and dumbbells. And like I said, there was a scene that some groups decide to go this route, and I saw why they didn't, right?
Mhm.
But they tell a story of a lion and a snake, and there's sometimes, because maybe you just did Midsummer, you have a lion's costume, so you have the lion come out and reenact it. And I don't think it was the wrong choice to not do that, but it's just like you had so many opportunities that were already built into the script that even if you are a repertory Shakespeare company, you would have the opportunities to heighten it or pull it back. And overall, this is a fantastic, like we said, phenomenal so many times that we're going to get shadow banned from using that word again, probably. But
Yes.
it's still one of these things that, like, we just wanted to mention, like, if you want to get weirder, we wouldn't
Yeah.
mind.
Like there's audience out there that would love for you to get weird.
And then the very last thing, as I said, I think that it's very hard as just a person who goes to see theater, especially as people who majored in theater, did Shakespeare, love Shakespeare. I want to recommend this to anybody to go
Mhm.
see. But I do think that it is hard to recommend it to average theater goers. Not everybody is going to be a Shakespeare head, but I'd like everybody to give it a shot. I'd like everybody to give it a try, even if it's confusing the first time. I feel like this is going to be the place to dip your toes in and have that experience. So I said, I think that the expense might turn people off. I think that, maybe being local might be a bit of I don't know, like proximity might be a challenge. Um, but I do think that from my experience working with the box office, buying the tickets, doing the cider tasting, I really feel like the people who run Blackfriars, who run the American Shakespeare Center, really go out of their way to make Shakespeare for everybody. They have
Mhm.
phenomenal education programs. I think that they have local engagement support and subsidies. So I think looking out for deals, finding a show that you're really curious about, whether it's a drama or a comedy. I promised I'd get back to, we went to As You Like It on purpose because it's one
Mhm.
of our favorite shows, but they are in current repertory where the same cast plays Our Town. And we have both we haven't done Our Town, maybe both of us, but it's like I definitely remember reading Our Town in
Mhm.
school, and I'm familiar with Our Town. And we watched a Star Trek episode where they all did Our Town, and so I think that we just said like our literary preference would not have been Our Town, and if
Right.
that would have been the only thing that we could have seen, we would have gone. We would have sat through it and watched it and probably really enjoyed it with those same actors, but we loved it so much more because we already loved As You Like It. So I feel like if that's Hamlet for you, if that's Midsummer for you, coming up with the right opportunity to pick that special moment, to look out for the special deals and subsidies, to work with the box office, like I do feel like this is going to be your best opportunity to find something to love about Shakespeare and to find ways to connect with the text and see yourself in it and hopefully get to our level of fanaticism about it. So, like I said, that's not necessarily a con, but that's what I wanted to end my piece on.
All right. Well, so yeah, we had tons and tons of pros. All of our cons were just tiny little nitpicks, which
Yeah.
if you've watched previous episodes, when we nitpick because we love.
Well, and I also feel like it's so funny because I always talk about I nitpick when everything else is so good because I got to find
Mhm.
something. I can't just be like, "Hey Glenn, do you like theater? I like theater. Okay, great. Loved it. Bye." Like we have to
Yeah.
find something to talk about. And we also feel like it's a lot of us it's more safe environment when they are
Yeah.
professionals because like
Yeah.
they do, they're going to be able to take, "Hey, we wish you had more silly costumes." Okay, great. That's
Yeah. And
that's what you wanted.
that is the thing, is the title of the podcast is, you know what I like? Theater.
We
But
like
that
theater.
can't be the entire episode.
Yeah, it'd be very
Otherwise
short.
it's welcome to You Know What I Like? Theater. Hey everyone, you know what I like? Theater. Bye.
Well, and on that note, I think we've come to the end of the episode. I think we can
All
kind of
right.
close this one out. Say, go
Yeah.
see your favorite Shakespeare show locally. There might be
Mhm.
some spooky ones coming up. That's also kind of like new goals, finding some spooks. I know I'll be on the lookout for it.
Yeah.
Um, I know that there's a lot of local people doing Christmas Carol, also spooky. You know,
Yeah.
the original Nightmare Before Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, let's see. And talking about, like I said earlier, finding movies based on plays, I'll have to dig into that a little bit and see what I can find. Maybe we could do like a She-Devil from Mars episode or something.
Yes. Well, that's it from us. You know what I like? Theater.
Theater.
And we'll see you next time. Don't forget to share and like. Don't forget to share. Like we always try to tag each theater, share it with actors. We hope they know how much we love them. And next time we're going to go see a musical.
Ooh.
Alrighty. Bye, guys.
Bye.